Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, July 10th, 2017. My name is Sam Seder. This is the four-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Professor from Purdue University, Harry Targ, on the ongoing privatization of the public university. Meanwhile, the Republicans have 3 weeks to pass their health care bill. John McCain says it's dead. But he also picked Sarah Palin. So, keep that in mind. Meanwhile, Fredo Jr. sought a Clinton Oppo tape from the Russians. And meanwhile, the fair princess of the United States sits in at the G20.
And wait a
meetings.
second. If Don Jr. is Fredo, then what is Eric? That's like a character not in that movie.
Yes, no, this is a different movie.
Okay.
This is like the Star Wars. You know how they have like the series, and then they have like these side movies?
Oh, okay.
Because he's Fredo Jr., because his dad is also Fredo.
Sonny's temperament, Fredo's intellect.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Trump's still mad at Comey as the White House races to stop Congress's Russian sanction bill. And the Freedom Caucus plans to hold the debt ceiling hostage again. Meanwhile, Republicans ripping a page out of the Chamber of Commerce playbook for their tax cuts. What's new? And lastly, another ag gag law found unconstitutional. All this and more, ladies and gentlemen, on today's Majority Report. Now, I should tell you folks right up front, I sort of lied, as it were, about where I was. I am at a remote location for the week, but as you can see, we can still do the show. Matt and Michael are in Brooklyn, and Kelly is on paid administrative leave. I need you guys also I need you guys to send me the sound sheet as well. I have not received that.
At one of your email addresses, I'll IM you.
Okay, thank you. Just tell me which one.
Just say it on the air. Just say it.
Just say
It's
oh, please.
It's at Shmuley's Boutique Cedar.
Okay. I got that. All right. Before we go any further, let me just remind you that with everything that's going on in our world, it can be hard to keep up with the latest political stories, the perspectives, all of it. That's why I love Texture. I mean, how do you think I can do all of the reading I do to do this show? Well, Texture is an app that lets me read trusted sources, basically any ones that I choose, all from the convenience of my phone or tablet. With 200-plus magazines available, Texture puts an endless supply of in-depth interviews and articles into the palm of your hand. I've told you, folks, when I'm on the road, I take my little iPad, and I basically have my own created magazines. Plus, the best thing about Texture for me, personally, is that it also gives me an opportunity to catch up with stuff that's not politics, frankly. So I can check on what the best design is for wood storage on Family Handyman. Or I can look and see what's going to give me the best speed on my router. From, I don't know, any number of the tech magazines there. But Wired's there. They don't do that stuff as much, Wired, but a little bit. And thanks to Texture's daily recommendations and exclusive interactive features, you can easily pinpoint the articles that you want to read. Plus, Texture is searchable, so you can mark what you like, check out old issues, or view bonus video content seamlessly. Everything from National Geographic to Fast Company to Rolling Stone, available for way less than the Texture app. It was selected as one of Apple's top 2016 apps. Texture's normally $9.99 a month, but if you sign up right now at texture.com/majority, you get a 14-day free trial. $9.99 is worth, like, what, 2 magazines now? Right?
Oh.
Your subscriptions?
Yeah.
Is it even?
Maybe maybe even less.
And for $9.99, you have access to 200. New Yorker, New York Magazine, those two alone. 14 days, try Texture for free. Go to texture.com/majority. That's texture.com/majority. And ladies and gentlemen, now that Kelly is on paid administrative leave, it's a good time to talk about ZipRecruiter. Folks, are you hiring? Do you know where to post your job to find the best candidate? I don't, but I don't have to, because I just post it on ZipRecruiter, and it goes to, like, I don't know, 100+ job sites. They have this powerful technology that matches the right people to your job better than anyone else. That's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other job sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them. 80% of jobs posted on ZipRecruiter get qualified candidate in just 24 hours. And the best part for me, you don't have to juggle emails or calls to your office. You screen, rate, and manage candidates all in one place with ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use dashboard. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results. And now, my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. What? That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/majority. ZipRecruiter.com/majority. One more time, to try it for free, go to ZipRecruiter.com/majority, ladies and gentlemen. Matt, will you put what is the sound clip that we want to play first right now before we get to the interview?
Oh, I don't know, Michael. Do you have one? Do you want to get
I
into
would
the
like
Russia
to
stuff?
do this. I would actually kind of like to play this Ted Cruz sort of game he did with Chuck Grassley and Chuck Schumer with Stephanopoulos.
All right, let's hear this.
This is number 2, and it's kind of funny. He's playing a real game here, undermining Grassley. It'll take just a moment. You got it, Matt?
Could be an uphill fight with some of your colleagues, including Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, is worried what it's going to mean for pre-existing coverage of pre-existing conditions. Here's what he said to Iowa Public Radio about your proposal.
There's a real feeling that that's subterfuge to get around pre-existing conditions. And if it is, in fact, subterfuge, and it has the effect of annihilating the pre-existing condition requirement that we have in the existing bill, then obviously I would object to that.
What do you say to Senator Grassley?
Well, look, I think we're making steady progress, and I think the conversations have been collaborative and in good faith. I don't think we should be deceived by Chuck Schumer and his attacks and misstatements.
But that's Chuck Grassley, not Chuck Schumer.
I understand that, but what's being repeated there is what Schumer said this week, which is that he called it a hoax. And listen, Chuck Schumer and Barack Obama know a lot about health care hoaxes.
All right, so basically what's going on here is Ted Cruz is trying to push this, I think it's called the Consumer Freedom Choice Amendment, something to that effect, which, of course, basically says, okay, you can retain those aspects of the patient protections in the Affordable Care Act as long as insurance companies are allowed to sell one plan that is not it is not compliant to the minimum standards set by Obamacare. Now, of course, that will be much cheaper because it will be crap insurance. It will also attract younger and healthier people because they don't feel like they need real health insurance. And what will happen is those other plans that are compliant, Obamacare compliant, will basically attract mostly older and sicker people, broadly speaking. And that's when you get what is known as a death spiral, where the percentage of people who are in a plan who are going to need it beyond the average person goes up, and the plan just becomes more and more expensive and then dies because no one can afford it. It's also basically what the high-risk pools are. They are just basically death spiral pools, available only for people with a ton of money who need a ton of health insurance. And they know they do because they're already sick. I mean, so that's the problem there. But, yeah, Cruz is trying to deflect the fact that his own Republican colleagues are saying that his plan is transparent way of destroying health insurance. So the Republicans seem to have a real problem. Again, I find it hard to believe they're not going to pass anything. But they only have a couple more weeks to do so, and I don't know. They better get to it. If they want. I hope they don't. And then, of course, Cruz's fallback position is, and we'll talk about that later in the program, is to just go back to let's repeal it, have it kick in after the 2018 midterms, and then let's figure out what we're going to replace it with. Now, the good news is I'm not losing any sleep on this. Why? Because
Amazing transition.
Thank you. Because every time I put Saul to sleep, I fall asleep because he's the one who's got the Casper mattress in our house. Casper is an obsessively engineered mattress at a shockingly fair price. Supportive memory foams create an award-winning sleep surface with just the right sink and just the right bounce. Try Casper for 100 nights risk-free at your own home. If you don't love it, they'll pick it up and refund you everything. You get to try it out for 100 nights. It's crazy. Casper understands the importance of truly sleeping on a mattress before you commit, especially considering you're going to be spending a third of your life on it. Free shipping and returns to the U.S. and, are you ready for this? Canada. With over 20,000 reviews and an average of 4.8 stars, it's quickly becoming the internet's favorite mattress. Get $50 towards any mattress purchase by visiting Casper.com/majority and using the offer code majority. Folks, it's the most comfortable mattress we have in the house. Basically, the only reason why we sit down and put Saul to bed anymore is just because we want to fall asleep on his mattress. Casper.com/majority. Don't tell him I said that. I feel like it would bum him out. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Professor Harry Targ on the ongoing privatization of the public university.
Just one moment. You got it? Okay.
We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome to the program Professor Harry Targ, a professor in the Department of Political Science at Purdue University, on his piece in the Jacobin, An Education Worth Fighting For. Welcome to the program, Harry.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So, give us you start your piece with Mitch Daniels, the former governor of Indiana, the current president of Purdue University, that he was announcing the purchasing of Kaplan University this past April. I mean, tell us what the implications are of that purchase.
Okay. The faculty was very much surprised by his announcement of the purchase of Kaplan University, and there had been apparently 5 months of discussion between the Purdue administration and its board of trustees about purchasing Kaplan University. And President Daniels' presentation indicated that the motivation for the purchase was to provide massive educational opportunities for non-traditional students, and that Kaplan University, one of the for-profit online universities, was an ideal institution to work with to increase educating non-traditional students. Much of the details of the purchase and the arrangement and the relationship between Kaplan University and Purdue remained unclear. As far as I can tell, they remain unclear today. Secondly, as we began to look at some of the literature on Kaplan University, they've been subjected over the years to suits, as have many other for-profit universities, for promising students more than they could deliver, and substantial numbers of students borrow money to go to Kaplan and don't end up with a degree that leads them to jobs. There is a question of curriculum. It's unclear what fields are going to be offered at Kaplan through Purdue or Purdue through Kaplan. So there are a whole array of unanswered questions that emerged from Mitch Daniels' surprise announcement. And again, they have not been clarified since. As I began to, you might, yeah.
Well, let me. So just to take us to that point, because there's a couple of things to note here, and Kaplan, like most, if not all, of these online private universities, rely an extraordinarily high amount is a function of government loans. I mean, we're talking like 80-90% of the revenue and the tuitions are paid via government loans. A, and B, you're right. There is, a lot of skepticism as to the value of these degrees, which are largely sought after by people who have entered the workforce and then decided, like, I need a degree that's going to help me go further in my career in some fashion. And that's what we mean, I think, when we say non-traditional students that aren't coming right out of high school, but are have spent some time in the workforce and realize that they need a college education to be competitive. And so the fundamental question, I think, right, in Mitch Daniels' pitch to the Board of Trustees to buy this is, how does this enhance Purdue University's presumably primary objective, which is to increase the amount of educational opportunities for people, as opposed to being a profit center? And I should just add, before I throw it back over to you, that I don't know specifically about Kaplan, but broadly speaking, these for-profit universities, if you look at a stock market graph of what happened from the day after the election to today, you see essentially the trajectory of a rocket going straight up into the air. I mean, you're seeing stock valuations for these places going up by 60, 70, 80, 90% because they know that most of the regulations that the Obama administration is starting to impose are gone. So it seems to be the primary question, right? I mean, why is Mitch Daniels doing this?
Well, that remains an open question to us faculty. One, the decisions were totally non-transparent, so the faculty haven't been involved. It's unclear how the Purdue faculty will participate in curricular decisions and development of programs. It's unclear what role the Kaplan University faculty will play. It's unclear what percentage of the Kaplan faculty are in fact credentialed the way Purdue faculty are. And it's just unclear what's going to be offered that's beneficial to these non-traditional students who, as you suggest, oftentimes incur enormous amounts of debt. And this leads to the sort of general overarching theme of my article, the impact of neoliberalism and the privatization of public institutions, of which this is a recent addition. So, it all remains a fog, except for what you suggest, increased profits for the for-profit institutions. Part of my befuddlement is that Mitch Daniels has not clarified the nature of the relationship, the benefits for Purdue, the benefits for these non-traditional students. But what seems to be the case is that the for-profits, in this case Kaplan, are going to gain enormous profits. And Mitch Daniels has alluded to the fact that some of the profits in the long run will go into Purdue coffers as well. So
now Purdue is a public university.
That's right. It's the land grant university in the state of Indiana.
And so, I mean, just so take us through this. I mean, when you're in this piece, you're talking specifically about the privatization or the increasingly privatized, I guess, agenda and forces that are working upon public universities.
Yes.
So walk us through this a little bit.
Okay. Just if you'll give me a few moments. One, many of us refer to neoliberalism as a shorthand description of the latest stage of capitalist development. And neoliberalism relates to some substantial qualitative changes in public policy, deregulation of the economy, cutting of taxes, particularly to the wealthy, the cutting of public services and shifting public programs to private institutions, and perhaps most importantly, the privatization of public institutions. This emergence of neoliberalism is the kind of dominant policy orientation parallels the so-called Reagan Revolution, right? We see a full-scale shift towards neoliberalism beginning in the 1980s. And again, many public institutions are privatized, and government plays less of a role in regulating the economy. And I remember the classic line from President Reagan: "Government is not the solution, government is the problem." The underlying theoretical orientation of neoliberalism is a sort of the classic free market economics. Hello?
Yep. Continue, please.
Okay. The sort of stream of thought running from Adam Smith to the Chicago School, Milton Friedman at the University of Chicago. And that kind of thinking has become dominant in both the Democratic and Republican parties. We see it in public education, K through 12, the dramatic increase in charter schools and voucher programs. And the state of Indiana has been in the vanguard in shifting public funds from public education to private schools, particularly charters and the voucher system. And I once was listening over lunch to Rush Limbaugh, late 1980s, and he made the bold statement that one of the few institutions we have not gained control of is the university. And that statement stuck with me ever since. And I think we've seen in the 21st century what I call a crisis of higher education is a shift, a multidimensional shift from the traditional idea of public higher education to neoliberalism. And this connection between a for-profit online university and Purdue University is just one manifestation of it. So I think we're talking about a historic process of which the university is becoming a central force. So I don't know if that gives some sense of
absolutely. And let's start where the university was, and then we will talk about how it has gotten to where it is today, and what are the forces that that push that change and that development. I mean, more specifically. But let's start with where the university was when we talk about public universities. I mean, what was their original mandate? Why were they created?
Okay. In this article, I refer very briefly to some writings on the history of higher education. And I wouldn't want to leave the impression that there's been a shift from universities that represent the interest of the broad populace to universities that just represent the interest of the rich. Universities have always reflected the interests of ruling classes of different historical periods. At the dawn of the 20th century, we see significant changes in education, both private and public institutions, to train a workforce for the new industrial revolution, to train technicians who could provide scientific research that facilitates economic development. And we see the emergence of the modern organization of universities into departments. And I always like to point out that my own field, political science, is separated from economics, and the old idea of political economy is eliminated, and I think for political reasons. So the university has always been.
Will you just tease that out for people? Because I think people are becoming more conscious of that concept of political economy these days, and just tease out that dynamic, because I'm not sure that people fully appreciate what you're saying in when you say that.
Okay, I'm interested not only in these administrative and policy changes, but changes in the nature of curriculum, that is the substance of what students learn in the university. And there's a long tradition. A tradition goes back to Adam Smith as well as Karl Marx and David Ricardo that sees economics and politics as fundamentally interconnected. So that if you're analyzing political phenomena, whether the issues involve economic cycles and unemployment and inequality and so on, the analyses always try to show the connections between the economic phenomena, the economic processes, and the political decisions that had some clear connection to these economic changes. By separating politics from economics, we create in one field, political science, the study of voting behavior and how a bill becomes a law. And in another field, economics, you have the study of oligopoly, that is the changing organizational structure of the economy and so on. And the presupposition is that's left in people's minds, particularly our students, is these are separate and distinct phenomena. And what we're seeing today, and I think you're right, most people are realizing this, that there's fundamental connections between politics, how political institutions work, and economic interests. So this sort of overcomes the artificial separation between political science and economics that we see emerging in the early 20th century university. So I don't know if that helps.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the idea is that once we separate politics from economics as a discipline, you could make, it appears as if the relationship between politics and economics is not too dissimilar. The relationship between politics and weather, let's say.
That's right.
Economics
and
is
I
a
should
science.
add more,
Go ahead.
More importantly, even history. That so much of among the struggle over the transforming curricula and the shift to STEM, that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and away from liberal arts, is to extrapolate knowledge from historical context as well. And all that we've been talking about since we started was the historical development of the university, and I think that's just terribly important. And I've been worrying about, for example, the crisis on the Korean Peninsula. And a lot of people aren't aware of the origins of the Korean War and the longstanding hostility between the U.S. and North Korea and so on and so forth. So from my point of view, we need to bring history back into this to the story as well and integrate history with politics and economics. And so the impact of these changes on the curricula, on the substance of what students are taught and expected to know, is impacted as well as these sort of administrative changes and who makes profit from the university and so on. And perhaps what's being taught in the curriculum is maybe the most important part of this dilemma.
All right, so we had this this separation of politics and economics as as part of the curriculum, and sort of a siloing of history as well. And
Right.
so once we go from there, I mean, where else do we see the impact of the push to where I guess to privatize more and more of the universities?
Okay, there are other connections as well. There's been a substantial change in higher education from a vision of a well-rounded education involving liberal arts as well as science and engineering and other fields, to a concentration on what's called STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And people who celebrate the need to push more in the direction of STEM argued that in a 21st century economy, our students need to, we need to produce more engineers, more scientists, more computer technologists, more mathematicians. And therefore, the liberal arts are less salient and important than they may have been in the past. Furthermore, one metric that is used to evaluate the success of the university is job placement. And the argument is made that if someone, say, takes a degree in English literature and is a specialist in Shakespeare, this is not going to lead directly to a job. So what you have is the drive towards putting more resources into STEM, and that lends itself, I think, to online programs on computer technology and these kind of skill tasks that are important. I've looked at some literature on the debate about STEM in the Chronicle of Higher Education and other sources that argue that we're producing more STEM graduates than there are jobs for them in the overall economy. So in other words, we're turning out more computer scientists, we're turning out more civil engineers than the economy can handle. But what we see going on at Purdue and elsewhere is a substantial shift in emphasis from a well-rounded educational program that involves students taking liberal arts subjects, history, politics, economics, literature, sociology, and other fields, to concentrate more on the STEM fields and to use as metrics of success the number of jobs that are available in these various fields. And the statistics used are sometimes of questionable value. So my concern also is about the very nature of education. When I was in college as an undergraduate a zillion years ago, I was a journalism major, and I took liberal arts classes. And the College of Liberal Arts was called the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. And the presumption, I think, was that there was a connection between scientific knowledge and political processes, and economics was even in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. And I presume that that was based upon a kind of holistic, organic conception of knowledge, whereby all these different phenomena that students might be interested in are interconnected. But now what you have is a shift towards narrowing and atomizing education. In terms of administration, more and more university administrations are dominated by people who come from the business world. That's the case at Purdue University, or who come from politics. And I would want to add, and then I'll try to shut up and let you speak, that this whole thrust has been influenced politically by the Koch brothers and ALEC, the sort of legislative arm of the Koch brothers, trying to influence state legislators to shift their use of resources in public education, K through 12, to privatize that, and in higher education as well. And in reference to the latter, the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities has noted that since the recession of 2008, there's been a substantial reduction in state legislative support for public universities in virtually all of the states in the United States. So all of this is interconnected, and it involves corporate influence, involves administrative control of universities at the expense of faculty. It involves the transformation of what's being taught, and it involves fundamentally the transformation of what knowledge is and should be transmitted to young people.
And I would say that the last point that you're making is both, it seems to me, both sort of the means of this cycle and the ends of this cycle on some level, right? I mean, if we start with the premise that an education is to presumably make you a better person, really, I guess in the context of our society, a more well-rounded citizen, one who is aware of all the influences on society and ultimately, hopefully, will use that education to make society, to improve society in some fashion, in a myriad of different ways. If we then say we need to focus on STEM because it is better to get a job, it's not so, I mean, it's almost as if the STEM part of it is rather transferable. That is the second order issue. The first order issue is that you have transformed the university from a place to create a better citizen to a place to create better job prospects, to become a vocational school of sorts. And STEM ends up being the sort of, I guess, the rational answer du jour of what would, where the focus should be. But you've already sort of almost, without, sort of almost a sleight of hand, changed the goal of the university, which also happens to be the end, I guess, product too, which is that if we make this university a place to churn out potential workers, then careers essentially, then everything will be seen through that backdrop, and things like privatization, which will further enhance these places as forming, potential careers to fit in with their agenda, right? We need more engineers. We want to make it cheaper. I mean, I think, just to make the point, there was a group called Win the Future that wants to influence the Democratic Party, and we're floating the idea of free engineering degrees for, of course, their industry, which would drive down wages of the primary people that they would end up hiring in their industries. I don't know if they were thinking that one through that clearly, but that's the implications.
Right. I thought your summary was excellent. That's really what I'm trying to get at. It's a multidimensional transformation. The one thing I would add in this whole history of this sort of the use of higher education for purposes of the economy and political elites is that there's embedded in higher education almost an ideology, call it academic freedom, and the public acceptance of the proposition that a university ought to be a place where where ideas are contested. And there's that theme that runs throughout the history of higher education as well. And so what I would argue is that with the changes that you so aptly described, and I totally agree with, there also exists from time to time patterns of resistance, sometimes more effective and articulate than others. And we saw in the 60s one manifestation of this resistance. Clark Kerr, the president of University of California system, talked about the multiversity, and he talked about the university connected with the corporate world and America's national purpose on the world stage and so on. And that vision, stimulated lots of the protest, the student protest of the 60s. And I think we see today various forms of resistance as well. And some faculty and organizations like the American Association of University Professors continue to argue, one, that university policy should be based upon shared governance, that is, faculty have a role in decision-making, and two, that academic freedom ought to prevail. And so dominant ways of thinking, say about a separation of politics and economics, should be freely challenged by those who take a different perspective. And so there does exist resistance on the campus as well. And I think we're at a point in time now where the sort of mobilization of discontent around the country is also finding similar manifestations in college campuses.
You point out in your piece that in March of 2015, Mitch Daniels, the president of Purdue University, testified before a U.S. House subcommittee on an idea or a recommendation of income share agreements. And this is, I somehow I missed that. And I got to say, it is stunning. It is as if, it really is sort of, I feel like this dynamic is what I would use as a metaphor for some policies that I disagree with. Never mind it actually being a policy. Tell us what that means, an income share agreement. Because I think it illustrates the dynamic that we have in this country now, where it's, it is, maybe this is going a little too far, but it's a similar dynamic, and it shows to me the problem with the idea of debt-free college as opposed to free college. Because
exactly,
just tell us what that is.
Yes, the proposal is something like that. President Daniels in Purdue is soliciting alums to loan students money to pursue their academic degrees. And any student who takes a loan from an alum or some committee that allocates the funds signs an agreement, a payback agreement over several years after they secure a job. I think Daniels has indicated there are about 150 students now who have taken this income share agreement. And again, the idea is to establish a system whereby wealthy alums, in a sense, indenture these students who will pay back money over time. I assume whoever oversees the loan arrangement will decide what students and what fields are worthy of loans and what ones are not. Your question and your point implies that there's another way to go. That is Bernie Sanders' idea of free tuition, free education for everyone. And free education implies that education is not just for individuals, but is a public good, that an educated population, an educated citizenry is as vital to the maintenance of a democratic and flourishing society as the building of bridges and roads and lots of other things. So I would argue that the Sanders proposal, diametrically opposed to the income share agreement, is much more in keeping with the tradition of education as a public good. And, we should, fight vigorously for the Sanders kind of proposal.
I mean, this should be obvious to people, but what we're talking about is, not having a market-based decision as to whether or not, certain people are going to be able to go through their college experience, their university experience, without owing a ton of money, because they're not going to invest in teachers, they're not going to invest in social workers,
exactly.
They're not going to invest in writers or artists or whatnot. I mean, broadly speaking, and even if they were, it's still, I think, sort of it reeks of indentured servitude.
It really does, yes.
And I would say too, even if we were to provide a sort of a government-based or some type of, you can work here's a work share during that time. The idea that we would saddle people who want to go into teaching or any other profession for that matter, who don't have the same income as their classmates or their same wealth as their classmates, that they're going to have a fundamentally different experience or less time to excel or whatnot, because they've got to work during that time. If they choose to do that and you want extra money, that's another thing. But to compel people in that way, and we should say the idea of a free, if you want to say public option in every state, that's not terribly radical. We certainly had examples of that in this country as recently as 50 years ago.
That's right.
And so,
yes.
And is that, I mean, when you talk about these issues and you see this sort of like ongoing cycle, if you will, right, where the university gears itself towards providing professional placement and job placement for its students, and therefore a whole series of things happen that reinforce that as the purpose of the university, and then it attracts funding that continues to reinforce that. Is a free public option in each state the best mechanism to sort of break that cycle or to reform the broader university trend towards this privatization and geared towards a vocational school? Or is there I should say, is there another reform that you perceive would have equally as beneficial outcome?
Well, this is really an interesting question. I had occasion years ago, because of my own sort of intellectual curiosity, to teach a course once on the anarchist tradition, teach a course once on classic writings on utopias, including some 20th century writers like Paul Goodman and Ivan Illich, who wrote on education, and some of the Marxist tradition. And I found that almost central to these big theorist arguments was an educational system, a conception of knowledge, a discussion of how to organize education. It wasn't always, they weren't always things that I found interesting or attractive, but, maybe what needs to be done, and those of us who are in social movements need to do, is to bring educational theory and practice into our social movements, whether we're talking about Black Lives Matter or climate change or Fight for 15, to ask questions about, well, what role does education play in raising the consciousness of participants in our movement and helping us understand how our issue fits into a broader, revised, more humane educational system. And so then you begin to, that's a sort of the baseline. And then you begin to talk about a variety of specifics like free tuition, like fight to maintain the tenure system, the fight to allow adjuncts to unionize, all these different specific issues that are important in their own right maybe should be sort of interwoven in a general discussion about what would education be like in a free society. I've had occasion to hear lectures from two young women who have had the opportunity of studying medicine in Cuba. They're students from all over the world that are given scholarships to study medicine in Cuba. And what they described, not only their classroom and their teaching experience, but they described a whole outlook and worldview about medicine and community and a medicine based upon prevention as much as cure and so on. So that there was a whole kind of ideology undergirding their medical training. And, by analogy, maybe we need to begin a serious conversation about what would education in a free society look like, and how does it relate to all these different movements that are emerging, and what underlies Bernie Sanders' proposal for tuition-free education. Let's look at the underlying value manifestations of this specific proposal. So, I guess what I'm saying is there are a lot of different elements that maybe need to be interconnected into a broader vision of education in a just society.
A free university option in every state means a lot more than just you'll have an option to go to a university for free. Harry Targ, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. We will link to an education worth fighting for on majority.fm.
Okay, great.
All right, folks.
We
I think a very interesting take on, and I still am having trouble getting over the Mitch Daniels proposal. I will say I ran into one of those things when I was looking for an executive producer on a movie I did, where I met with a guy and I was looking for, $25,000 for finishing funds for this movie. And it was pretty stunning to me because he wanted to give the movie the money if he could have 10% of my future earnings.
Oh,
and
wow.
I thought, it's an interesting business I would like to be in, but no. And we didn't go with that guy.
It's an interesting. Did he have like a cigar? Take you into the back room.
No kidding, right?
It's a lot. That's quite an offer.
Yeah.
Is there an echo when I talk?
Yeah, we're having a little bit of echo from you, Sam, on our microphones. I can minimize it here, but
you're getting you're getting your own feedback.
Yeah, our own feedback.
All right. Well, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll be we will head into the fun half, folks. Just a reminder: it is your memberships that make this show possible. You can become a member today by joining the Majority Report at jointhemajorityreport.com. You can also buy your coffee from justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY, get 10% off. Also, if you buy your stuff from Amazon or from jet.com, do so at our link at majorityreportkickback.com. That's majorityreportkickback.com. You will notice no difference, but we will get a kickback. Also, if you want to be part of the program, 646-257-3920 is the number. 646-257-3920 is the number. We'll be right back after this.
Think of all the times she said no, 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 no. Like to speak my mind. She said no, 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 no. And I know her time's not free. She didn't waste none on me. Situation sad. She said no, 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 no. Things are looking bad. She said no, 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 no. And if it was up to me, I'd tell her a thing or three. Every time I see her look my way, I don't know, girl, what to say. Situation sad. She said no, 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 no. Things are looking bad. She said no, 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 no. And if it was up to me, I'd tell her a thing or three. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. No, 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 no.
We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. You guys still getting an echo on your end?
No, I'm good.
All right, good.
Yeah.
I can supposedly get to my IMs here. What's that?
That's the IM music.
No, you still playing music?
Yeah, sorry,
Matt?
that was whatever comes after La Poupée, that vision.
So you've got IMs there, and
Matt, you got to turn off your music because I can't hear anything.
There you go.
Except for your
the
music.
host will be with you shortly.
So you got the IMs too.
I theoretically
Okay.
should. Yeah, wait
Cool.
a sec. There we go.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, great.
On the edge. On the edge. On the edge. Hey, Sam, thanks for having the guest on today. It was a great break from my growing fear of the Trump presidency, which rivals Mindy's. Understandable. I found the...
I was pretty inspired by his time at the G20 summit, just to be fair.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
What did you find so inspiring about it?
Well, the way he walked around with other leaders and they pointed at each other and smiled, and then they had serious looks, and that was just like, things are good, right? Black guy from Africa. And he was like, yeah, nice to meet you, Trump. And he was just like, great guy. And then Ivanka sat in, and Angela Merkel had no problem with it, which I read on his Twitter feed.
Do you think that's actually the case, though? Oh.
Whoa.
Who's that? I think we got.
Sounds like we have a caller.
Yeah, I think we got a caller on inadvertently. I'm still trying to figure out. Oh, gosh.
Oh, God.
I'm still trying to figure out working all the my different buttons here.
I think
set up on
Trump was saying that not only was it unfair, but that if like Chelsea had sat in for Hillary, the press would be reporting it as like the first step in Chelsea's presidential campaign. And maybe.
No, let's see. Wait a second. I'm having trouble here finding.
I am sure that people did not appreciate having him, her sit in for him at G20 meeting.
I mean, it's 646-257-3920 is the number. It is really disturbing.
Thank you for calling in the Majority Report. The host will be with you shortly.
I played a couple months ago Sigmar Gabriel, who's a German politician. I forget his title. But he basically was saying, like, these kids showing up, like Ivanka and Kushner, he's like, it's more analogous to, like, going to, you know, like a country that's run by like a crime family and having to like meet with the kids. Like, this is my daughter. She runs the mines. Well, okay. Sure. You know, like it's like the Uzbeki family or something like that.
I mean, this is not, I mean, you know, we do have precedent for these type of things, except for we just call it Game of Thrones.
Right. And he said it was uncomfortable. It was like his language, but like, because it's another democracy. And it's like, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. They really do feel comfortable hanging out with the Saudis. And there's a lot of obvious reasons for that.
I also, yeah, I think the idea that, and look, you know, there was there was a clip we were going to play of an Australian news report, which where I agreed with the guy's sentiment. Turns out the guy is not necessarily the best representative for for anything, really.
Right.
But that aside, you know, and I am certainly I am. Not one who has bought into the American exceptionalism narrative over the years. But there is an argument that having the not having a democracy as one of the premier world leaders could be problematic down the road. Right? I mean, to have the two, you know, to have the rest of the world looking to China and Russia as opposed to the United States, and I'm not saying we're in that situation, but to looking for them for leads, looking to them to as watersheds, whether it's from a national security standpoint or whether it's from a economic policy, whether it's from an energy policy, whether it's dealing with any world crises, to have the entire world look almost exclusively at some form or another of autocratic rule, I think is probably sending the world on the wrong trajectory.
Yeah. I mean China had
you know,
already kind of have been sort of creating that position for itself by being so much more efficient too. You know, like,
well, yes. I mean that is one of the benefits of
autocracy,
you know,
is
yes,
efficiency. Yes.
Yes. You don't have a lot of debate.
Yeah. You construct an airport overnight, and if people don't want to leave their homes, they're bulldozed out of them. But it also reminds me of that people like it was a little weirdly refreshing when Trump would say things like to Bill O'Reilly, like, "Oh, you think we're so innocent?" When he would say, like, "How could you, praise Putin?" And he would kind of be like, "Well, what are you talking about? We violate human rights all over the world." But the counterpoint, which people didn't seem to pick up, was like, when people like us say that, we're saying that's bad. He was just saying, "Yeah, what's the problem?"
Right.
And that's not a good. I mean, there's a lot of things like that. I don't want to rehabilitate George W. Bush. He's horrible. But it did sort of matter that he came out and said, like, hey, we're going to go kill Muslims across the globe in a reckless global war, but don't throw a rock at the guy at your local, runs a shop by you. It's very different than I don't know. Maybe that guy's involved in Al-Qaeda. Maybe he isn't. I don't know. Maybe they should be banned.
Well, I mean, the reality is, if you look at the numbers of hate incidents in this country, they have skyrocketed over the past, really 6 or 7 years. I mean, during the Bush administration, they did a good job of tamping that stuff down. The Islamic, the Muslim attacks. And, of course, during the Obama administration, because Obama, why was it? Why do you think it was that got unleashed during the Obama years?
Allahu
Was it
Akbar.
because, yeah, exactly. All right, well, let's play
It might have
a
been
little
Glenn
bit
Beck,
of,
right? Those chalkboards.
What's that?
I was thinking even specifically of Glenn Beck. I mean, there was a broad thing, but Glenn Beck, man, he really rode that wave of helping create an environment of sinister ideas around Obama.
And I would say also our current president was also fairly prominent in
What?
that.
I never did anything.
In that little project.
I never did anything. You say he's born somewhere. What do I know?
We'll get to this story about Don Jr. meeting with. I mean, in that story, I don't think there's any smoking gun in terms of what we've seen in terms of the Russian, supposed Russian collusion and whatnot, which I don't think happened. Although I have to say, I'm even, while I'm quite convinced that the Trump administration and lackeys, Trump Inc., has relationships with Russian mafia who may have turned out to be associated with the Russian government. I don't know that they had anticipated that, and I have no doubt the investigation is going to find a substantial amount of illegality that's gone on. But I am even surprised that someone from the campaign, someone that close to Donald Trump, all it would take is, I'm from Russia and I have some information about Hillary Clinton, to get a meeting. I mean, on one hand, on one hand, I suppose the attitude is like, well, if you're really jaded about it, of course they're going to meet with people from a foreign country to get information that would compromise your opponent. But I don't really think, for the most part, we've had that level of cynicism.
I think,
or that close a proximity to the candidate.
The closest thing that I could think of, but just imagine for a second of like, a law firm connected to the Iranian government met with Obama's re-elect. So like, we are from the Iranian embassy. We have very damaging information on Mitchell Romney. Great. Send somebody over there for a meeting. That would have led to the greatest, the historic meltdown levels that would have led to. And also, incidentally, in that fantasy scenario, that would have been right. That would have been like a legitimate story. Like the Obama re-elect met with an Iranian government-connected lawyer for dirt on Mitt Romney. That's pretty questionable.
Yeah, I think that would be pretty insane. And if it was his son, who owns all his businesses. I mean,
this is a child that I adopted with Reverend Wright when we were in a civil union together.
Right.
And,
I mean, honestly,
facilitated our connection to Iran.
And this is everything I'm stating is what Donald Trump Jr. himself has said.
He literally says, like,
it
was about adoption and stuff on that bitch, Hillary
This
Clinton.
is not right. I'm not reading, Louise's Mensch, whatever her name is, tweets. I'm going by the statement that Donald Trump just put out, that Donald Trump Jr. put out, which is, I got approached by an acquaintance who I knew from my Russia trips with the the beauty contests, and supposedly a Russian attorney had compromising information on Hillary Clinton, and I met her and she didn't, and so I just I realized that was a pretext. I mean, that's their statement, right? That's the one that's supposed to be exculpatory according to them. There's the idea. Let's put it this way. If anybody harbored any notion that the Trump people were either too, I want to say this without trying to laugh, too ethical or too smart to collude with a foreign government to win an election, that seems to be out the window now. That doesn't mean that they did it. But I just think that, like, what Trump himself is admitting to is, yeah, that's pretty scandalous.
So an official from a Panamanian bank approached me and said that they might have some wholesale cocaine from Colombia, a couple of keys, and they could give me a deal. Showed up. Turns out the coke isn't real. So
yeah,
they wanted to talk about something else entirely, and it's actually a big waste of time. But I showed up for the cheap coke. Anyways, what's next?
Let's go to the phones. You're calling from a 415 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Joseph in Marin County.
And what's on your mind, Joseph?
Well, two things. One, I want to the idea that the pre-Trump administration wouldn't do back channel stuff with Russia. There's a history, especially with the Republicans doing with Nixon for the Vietnam War,
right,
and with George Bush and the Iran-Contra. So this is part of their set piece. This is how they operate. They're always setting the table ahead of time to stack the deck for themselves. So this is not ahistorical. This is extremely historical. And I think if they do get caught, and they might, I think they'll pull that out as, oh, you see, this is what happens in America. This is what we do. They're going to make it a new normal, normalize it if they get caught. So in a sense, I think the Democrats know that, so they're kind of pussyfooting around a bit.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. I mean, I mean, stuff like that, and stuff with like Ivanka sitting down at the table.
She's always trying to get me to do the right thing.
It's just
it's outrageous. Where was Julie Nixon during the peace conferences?
I mean, it's just not the way we.
Absurd.
And I feel
like it is the way we do it now. I mean, yes, it's not the way we should, but I'm afraid it is how we do it now.
All right.
This is the new normal. It's a normalization. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention real quickly was that it was obvious at the G20 that the United States is an outlier now in the Western world. Like everyone's talking about, even though it's somewhat absurd, but it isn't completely, that Merkel is really the brains in the Western Conference of Imperial Nations, or post-imperial nations. That she's the one they're kind of looking towards as the sane one. Obviously, the United States is insane.
Right.
And but the United States is the most powerful militarily wise. So what are we doing? We're ramping up the problems in North Korea, putting maneuvers in South Korea, while this is not tapping down anything. And Fox News is 24 hours. We need to have an assassination group. We need to go in there and clean out this nest of insane people. And it's all, paying homage to the military-industrial complex so we can continue to throw half our federal dollars towards weaponry.
Well, I would say that's part of it.
They're doing it.
Yes, and I would say the other problem with this dynamic is that people should make no mistake. As we lose prominence within the world arena, and people stop using us as a watershed to develop things like their economic plans, like their energy plans, like their security issues.
Well, we don't know how incompetent we are in Iraq. It's not like we have stunning successes
that's
we can show the world.
That's true, but but these are not separate. I don't think that the rest of the world sees these things as separate events. I think they see them as a continuum, and I think there's a lot of hey, remember those misgivings we had 10 years ago about that country? It turns out those misgivings were well placed. Because this, if Donald Trump isn't indicative of a society that is experiencing some major problems, I don't know. What else could be for an industrialized nation, right?
It's on the decline.
Yes.
We're on the decline.
And here's the problem, right? As our soft influence around the world declines, we're going to, as a nation, rely on our weaponry and our military far more, it seems to me. That's what I find a little bit scary.
Yeah. I think it's that. And the other thing is that, at least historically, that whatever a country does on the outside in the empire, they bring it home eventually. And that's what's happening with the militarization of the police forces and other such things that have been going on the last 10, 15 years, that since the so-called war on terror, the never-ending war. And eventually that
and
that
the austerity
war now is coming home.
Having structural readjustment packages here.
That's why the regular would play the 60s with the protesting and the way that people worked against the things that were happening in the country that they wanted to change. We don't have this. I don't think the people have the same leverage. The average citizen has the same leverage anymore. They don't really care about us that much. Yeah, you call your congressman, you demonstrate, but it's like, oh, you're just part of Soros's cabal or whatever. It's just dismissed.
Yep. All right. Well,
a million women. So anyway, I just wanted to just throw that out. And Sam, I've been listening to you for about 8 months. I discovered you, and I enjoy your show. And Michael's incredible. And
where did you?
Kelly gets back.
Thank you. Where did you start to hear the show?
I don't know. I just found it on YouTube, and now I watch it every morning.
Great.
And it's part of my tonic. It gets me through the day.
Good luck.
I appreciate everything you guys do.
Appreciate
Thanks. I don't know if you could hear me, but
all right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yeah, callers, I don't think because of the setup, I haven't quite figured this out yet. Totally. Cannot hear Michael. Or you guys back
Do you
want to
play no, do you want to play
yes.
We went over at that Donald Trump Jr. sound itself just to put a bow on it.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, now what is this? This is him talking about on June 6th. And what is he referring to here when he says, without a question, it reads and smells like a witch hunt?
I think this is when he was saying that basically, just the Russia story in general reads like a witch hunt. And this is like a couple of days, because this came out over the weekend, so I think this is before the story came out.
Okay.
Oh, this clip was a month ago. Yeah.
Wait, this clip was a month ago?
This clip was from
okay.
June, yeah.
June 6th of 2017.
Right.
All right, so here is Donald Trump, June 6th on Donald Trump Jr., who now they're starting, well, here, play this clip. This is him a month ago on Good Morning America.
To me, it's without a question, reads and smells like a witch hunt, because I have no other proof or evidence to show otherwise.
Now, apparently, the proof or evidence he has to show otherwise was he knows there's an absence of that proof, at least from his own personal experience, because almost to the day, a year ago from that appearance on Meet the Press, the New York Times reported that Donald Trump Jr. was promised damaging information about Hillary Clinton before agreeing to meet with a Kremlin-connected Russian lawyer during the 2016 campaign. This is according to 3 advisors to the White House who were briefed on the meeting and 2 others with knowledge of it. I mean, so this is not like a national security apparatus leak.
That's getting
These are
really
people
dirty
in the
there.
White House.
That was like everything was like the internal battles where they were knifing each other. I thought was like Priebus versus Bannon, Kushner versus everybody. But now, like, even the dumb kids are getting involved. Like, I thought.
Now,
I thought
wait a
of,
second.
like,
Yeah,
Donald Jr.
maybe it's
Come
Tiffany.
on.
But let me also remind you, okay? Let me just remind you.
Tiffany set up
who
the
else
meeting.
is in the White House? Who else is considered a White House advisor, right? I mean, all of these
Kushner.
terms mean something. What?
Kushner.
Well, no.
Who
I'm
are you
going to
thinking
read a
of?
headline from another piece in the New York Times this weekend. At private dinners, Pence quietly courts big donors and corporate executives. I mean, look.
That's snake.
I don't know.
That's
but
snake.
there's somebody in the White House. I mean, this is one of those, cui bono type of situation. Like, who in the White House? I can understand when Kushner gets thrown on. And now maybe, look, maybe Bannon does leak something like this. I don't know.
Why did Mike tell me to step out in front of the bulletproof glass in Poland and just stand there? I don't get it. I mean, he said it would be great, but it didn't feel great. And people didn't seem to think it was great. So I don't understand what's happening with Mike.
The part about how people wanted to see me without any barriers. I get that. I don't know.
And now he wants me to fly to Afghanistan with no security detail to show that. I mean,
That's
I get
weird,
it
right?
because the
Weird.
troops love me, but isn't that like a security challenge?
My favorite part about this piece is that apparently, and according to Trump Jr.'s statement that he released, he asked Manafort and Kushner to come, but didn't tell him why. Hey guys, I know you're busy with the whole campaign. Just come over to my place. Just trust me
surprises.
Trust me on this.
Manafort like recognized the lawyer. He's like, "Oh yeah, we produced the fake Oppo video of Chechnya together in the '90s."
Now, and here's the thing: this is what he writes. I mean, this is really stunning stuff because he is conceding. After pleasantries were exchanged, he said the woman stated that she had information that individuals connected to Russia were funding the DNC and supporting Mrs. Clinton. Her statements were vague, ambiguous, and made no sense. No details or supporting information was provided or even offered. It quickly became clear that she had no meaningful information. And then apparently this is about the Magnitsky Act, which is an American law that blacklists suspected Russian human rights abusers. Now, I presume that is human traffickers, right?
Oh, I also call them talent agents.
I mean,
can you read the vague, ambiguous part again? What was that language? The woman was saying it was vague and ambiguous.
Her statements were vague, ambiguous, and made no sense.
That sounds like the kind of the Trump family language.
I was going to say,
Right.
It sounds like they're speaking each other's
Which
language.
is why
there.
I totally understood what she was talking about.
She said maybe in a certain sense that potentially there might be people that said that Hillary might be doing things that are not good. I understood immediately.
Very strange. Very, very strange stuff. But, of course, now this is a huge story for, and like we say, regardless of what your perspective is on Trump and Russia, if a top official with the Barack Obama campaign had met with an Iranian a lawyer with connections to the Iranian government because he thought that because that lawyer had said, I've got the dirt on Mitt Romney.
Ma salama.
It would be a big story.
Let's smoke hookah and say prayers first. Then we get to business.
So even those folks, and I think we are arguably one of those who are, somewhat skeptical of many of these stories, would have to admit that it's the big story of the weekend, unless you, of course, work at Fox and you worked with your friends on Fox and Friends.
Oh, this is very nice. Very noble moment for the president here.
This is a video everyone is still talking about this morning. President Trump lending a helping hand to a Marine rescuing his hat after it blows off his head when boarding Marine One. The president putting it back on his head, but as you can see, the wind's taking it off yet again. President Trump, though, not giving up. He persists, chasing after the hat once again before boarding. The Marine never flinched.
There you have it,
He
folks.
persisted.
That's the big story. This is the moment where Donald Trump became president.
Ironically, I'd literally sell you into human bondage if it gave me an extra $5.
The hat blew off again, and nevertheless, I persisted. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Rick Fain says, you can't mention Mitch Daniels without recognizing his part in the greatest success of the George Bush administration, which was the elimination of that troublesome surplus left by Clinton. One more, Nick. Hey, gang, I'm from Winnipeg, and this weekend I attended the Winnipeg Folk Festival, where I got to see the Shins, Margaret Glaspie and Big Thief. The latter of those two things, I learned through Matt's Majority Report Spotify playlist list. So thanks, Matt. I also got to see Peter Yarrow do some protest songs about Trump, which was pretty cool. Umar Shami. Sam, I'm definitely an advocate for single payer, but I wonder whether there are common compromises worthwhile maybe to such a system. Has the U.S. been a leading innovator in cutting-edge medical technology? If so, is there something inherent in the current system that drives such tech development? I thought of this when I heard Denmark will pay for travel to the U.S. for medical care that isn't available in Denmark. I have no doubt that there are medical technologies that have been developed in the U.S. I do have a doubt as to whether that's a function of the high price of medical care.
It could be.
Bard Martin. Trump at G20 looked like that one dude at a wedding that used to work with the groom and had to come as a single.
Well, that's totally not true because Trump tweeted out an amazing video where he was like totally winning at the G20 in a big way.
Kike the Cuck. A lot's been made out of the failure of California's assembly to pass single payer of late, but I've heard very little about the similar fate that befell the single payer bill in New York, the state Senate, following passing the assembly. Can you have a guest on to talk about this latest failure of the IDC? I mean, look, it's not a failure of the IDC. It is. It's not a bug of the IDC. It's a feature.
Right.
This
the Independent Democrats caucus for people outside of New York, and they caucus with Republicans.
Yes, and they do so largely with the blessing of Andrew Cuomo because he gets a fig leaf.
They're his excuse for not pushing a progressive agenda.
Yep.
And he's eyeing 2020. So we got to get back into the Andrew Cuomo is an absolute fraud stories.
Yeah, we got to start to ramp that up. Secret identity politics, that G20 montage set to okay.
We got to
preposterous choir music is what I imagine it's like to be in Mike Pence's head. This is this is really stunning. You're only going to be able to hear it. The visuals you do need to see this, but hearing it, I played this the other day, just on my computer as I was just watching it. I found it on Twitter, and Nikki was like, "Is that a North Korean song?"
You think it was almost at that production level?
There is a quality to this that is not terribly dissimilar to a what you would see what you would see or hear from like I guess I don't know a Russian or North Korean propaganda film.
Wow, we're really hitting our marks here.
And here's the thing, though, that I realize about this is that this is when we look at something like this, we think like, oh, everybody's going to see how horrible this is. And I just don't think that is the case.
Matt liked it.
I think that when this stuff gets played, people are going to, Trump supporters are going to just look at it and think, oh, this is good. All right, let's play this. Wow. They had to commission someone to write that song and presumably a choir to sing Make America Great Again.
They saved on the video editing, I think, budget, though.
Well, the thing is, too, is that they can amateurize that song. They don't need to just use it just for that video.
We're all gonna die. I like that some of the images they took, like in the clip we won't play from Australia. What was good about that package is that they found a bunch of stuff of Trump literally like not finding a chair to sit in, like randomly roaming around these
being
halls.
A wallflower,
yeah,
basically.
like completely socially disconnected from everybody else there. And even in that video, there's a couple of different segments of Trump looking like essentially completely incomprehending, like in the middle of a meeting. And then just like like some other minister from another country kind of be like, all right, I'm sitting next to Ivanka. Okay. Fair enough.
Greg, when you have one government for the whole country essentially planning something like single payer, they can mess up in huge ways.
Hey, Greg.
Just this past week, we have the following from the British press. 1 million patients a week can't see a general practitioner, the Telegraph.
Yeah, well, they've cut. There have been.
And before you say that's probably just spin, the number has risen 56% over the last years. Well, look at the budget, Greg.
Yeah, right. Why would it be in the last year?
What government's been in power over there?
Yeah, well, right. I believe Labor cut waiting times under Blair and Brown with higher investment.
Big Steve, Brooksy, looking forward to your response to that guy's Sam Harris video. All Harris wants to do is get rid of Islam. Honest.
It's the truth, and we're going to do a video about it. But
Chris Lepaco, Donald Trump Jr., says he met with the Russians because he said that they had information that would be hurtful to Hillary, but isn't a big deal because they didn't have the information, right? Someone should try that excuse on the next To Catch a Predator episode. It's not a big deal, officer. She's obviously not a 15-year-old girl. She's a 28-year-old roided out sheriff who just like to get me in the room. Lepaco wants to know about the Busey tape behind me. What kind of gems are on there? Well, there's a reason why this is written in bold. Well, wait, I don't know if this is that one. There's one that...
This is starting to feel like a witch hunt, Chris Hansen.
There's some... I'll go through those Busey tapes one day. Seder Dominus. When you see Palin working 14 words on Twitter in response to Trump's Poland speech, invoking 14 words... Oh, God, I forgot those 14 words. I can't even remember what they are now, but I do remember her use of them. Eric Mann, I can see Trump watching Game of Thrones. Jamie and his sister remind me of my relationship with Ivanka.
But I will tell you, Cersei's very, very tough stuff.
Hillary 2020, why not? Great interview. I'm a Purdue student. It was nice to hear a Boilermaker on the show. Minus the jewelry cuck on the other side of the conversation. Cuck's Father Part 2. The new D triple C slogans are horrible. Have you seen the other guys? Really? I know, that is just bad.
I have a friend who works in Republican politics, and he said, you guys really keep making it easy for us.
How could that be real? I don't understand how that... Have you seen the other guys could be real?
I thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's somebody in the office just thinking like, look, people say that we do this. Let's just own it, and it'll show that we're not defensive about it. Like they're just trying to get so clever.
We're the lesser of two evils. Put
okay,
it on
we got
a
two
sticker.
things. We got two things on the table, folks. We can either try and show that we're not embarrassed. That we're just running against them as they're bad and we're good, which will mean that we're actually not running that way because we're not embarrassed or annoyed by that. Or we could just do our job. Which one should we? Which option, A or B? Let's just do A.
Let's do
A. Calling from an 847 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey Sam, it's Josh from Chicago.
Hello, Josh.
Hello, Josh. You can't hear.
Try to do it.
I can't hear right-wing Mandela.
Hello, Josh.
Very nice, Sam. Very nice.
Uh-huh.
Two things. First of all, I have a great slogan.
You love it.
Democrats in
What?
2018. I have a great slogan.
What is it?
It was Tom Perez's one moment of brilliance when he said, "The Republicans don't give a shit about you, man." Whatever he says.
That was his best moment.
That was pretty good. I like how you had his voice cracking.
They don't
there
give a
when he was
shit.
doing that.
They should call it. I don't give a shit, Bill.
But I guess also I wanted to call in, and I got. What is your thoughts on the draft Bernie movement? Do you think it's as stupid as I do?
I'm not sure I understand it. I mean, I think Bernie could not be projecting that he's going to run any more than he is. He may not run, but
Right.
that's what he's doing. He's doing all the things you would do if you were going to run, because he's probably going to decide, as a function of like, I would bet how he's feeling. But he's definitely he's staffed up in a way that you would if you were going to run. I mean, if Bernie was not interested in running, he would not be building out his foreign policy team.
Matt Duss, great hire.
Matt Duss, and and Matt was hired, I don't know, months ago. I mean, so he clearly is setting the table. Whether or not he sits down to eat, I think is going to be a function of what he wants to do. And I don't think the existence or the absence of a draft Bernie, online entity is going to make, is going to in any way influence his decision. Maybe.
Well, it's so because like it's not to get him to run for president. Well, I mean, it may be. It's okay. Essentially, what it is they're trying to get the draft Bernie. From my understanding, from their really bad explanation at the People's Summit, it's basically they want Bernie to start a new party in 2018, and they get people to run for Congress in this new party.
Okay. Well, let me reiterate. Let me adjust to those facts because I didn't realize that. That's stupid.
I know.
Of course.
I mean, it's
so
just.
stupid.
It's stupid. Like it's never occurred to Bernie, who's been an independent his entire career, that maybe I should run on a third party ticket. I mean,
I never thought of that
the reason why
before.
he's not doing that is because he knows that's stupid.
It's like putting red onions on a cream cheese bagel. I never thought of it before.
Yeah. No, and I think the problem is it's now getting these like people who should know better are now supporting this or like saying, oh, this might be a good idea. Like Roseanne DeMiro was like, oh, this might be a good idea. And I think the thing is, like, this partially goes back to the dumb left, is like there is a fundamental difference between Democrats and Republicans. And Bernie has decided that it's easier. I mean, look, Chuck Schumer has supported a $15 minimum wage right now, right? He's one of the co-sponsors of the bill. It's easier to work within that party. And I don't know how many times Bernie has to say himself, I am not doing that. And ultimately, it distracts from my socialist agenda, these people.
I mean, it's ridiculous. Not only is there a fundamental difference between the parties, which is not to say that there, in some respects, there's some fundamental similarities, but there are fundamental differences. And more than that, the issue is like, look, we're set up in a certain way. You can try and change the structure, but all you're going to do is you're going to adopt similar problems, and you're just going to lose. I mean, ask Jimmy Reefercake what happens when a third party shows up. You get Governor LaPage for two, maybe, is it 3 terms?
2 terms. You got to start it at a state level.
Appreciate the call.
I don't understand. I
Appreciate the call.
There's also, there was an article in the Jacobin from like a year ago or so about, I mean, just literally how hard third-party politics is in the United States from a structural perspective. And actually, like, that is the actual rigging. And it goes back, like, I think to, the 1920s even. Like, both parties can, in Europe, it's not just like ranked choice voting and things like that. It's like how easy it is to get ballot access, as an example.
Yep.
It's amazing.
Here is Steve Mnuchin on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. And there's 2 things that we should talk about. We're going to, next up, regardless of what happens with healthcare, there's going to be an attempt for massive tax reform, or so-called tax reform. And when they tell you they're going to cut taxes, but they're also going to get rid of deductions and loopholes, all you need to do is go back to 1986, the Ronald Reagan omnibus tax cuts. There was actually 2 rounds of tax cuts, one in, I think it was 81, one in 86. But
81.
The big issue was, or the big sell was, all right, we're going to cut tax rates, but we're getting rid of a lot of deductions. And literally on the next day, they started to put the deductions back in. And within a year, basically, all of those deductions were back in place, and the tax cuts were maintained.
Do you remember the fun little side history about this, though?
Bill
Bradley wrote this bill, essentially, like the original thing that got passed, which really was the tax cuts traded for genuine closing loopholes. And he claims that this is one of the reasons that Donald Trump went bankrupt one of his first times, because he couldn't, because basically it hit real estate developers actually specifically pretty hard. It got rid of a lot of their loopholes and deductions. And he said his bill basically helped expose Trump in the 80s.
Ah,
yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well, here is Steve Mnuchin. And also know that the IRS as part of Trump's mandate to review all tax regulations, the IRS has come out with and supposedly adopted, or I should say, a Treasury report has adopted new regulations for the IRS that they think the IRS should adopt. And it turns out that there are 8 suggestions, 7 of which are directly taken from a Chamber of Commerce document in May. But here's Steve Mnuchin saying, trying to tamp down the rumors that Steve Bannon wants to increase taxes on the wealthy.
The website Axios reported that Steve Bannon in the White House is advocating a 40% top tax rate. He wants a 4 in front of it, maybe even higher than 40%. Is that idea actually on the table?
No, it's not. I have never heard Steve mention that. It's another example of a false leak that's being reported. I think it's very clear, we have a proposal out there that the administration has put out with a top rate of 35%, where we reduce and eliminate almost every single deduction. So that means that people who are in the high tax states will have no tax reduction.
Yeah. Steve Bannon doesn't do much of his talking around Steve Mnuchin, I bet. But who knows?
Yeah, I support a 40% rate.
Whatever.
Do that to hurt the Jew the next time he's at Stephanopoulos.
The funny thing about that rumor to me was that it was meant to seem so bombastic, like, oh, there's Bannon with the crazy idea again. But isn't that right that it's only increasing it by like 0.4% to get to 40%?
Well, it's a couple of percentage points.
A couple of percentage, but I think it might be if Bannon is leaking it himself, it's because he is. He might be somewhat more intelligent than average in this White House, and I think at a certain point you have to realize this works for our cults, but this whole policy agenda of populist neo-fascist white nationalism, the populist part isn't happening. So I might need to protect my personal brand moving forward. So maybe I should throw some proposals out there that aren't going to go anywhere, but make me look like I'm staying true to the kind of nationalist progressivism or whatever he was trying to sell during the campaign.
Here is more from that Mnuchin interview.
Okay. Yeah.
Where Mnuchin apparently is defending Trump's proposal for the cyber security cooperation with Russia.
They have a lot of computers. Okay, yeah.
I don't know. I
even their hookers are good at computers. Okay, I have a lot of experience with that. Yeah. Okay.
Here's Mnuchin.
The president also said in his tweets this morning that he's setting up a cybersecurity partnership with President Putin. That's already drawn a response from many, including Republican Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, who says partnering with Putin on a cybersecurity unit is akin to partnering with Assad on a chemical weapons unit. Okay. Your response?
Well, in all due respect, and I think very highly of the senator, but let me just comment on that. I think this is a very important step forward, that what we want to make sure is that we coordinate with Russia, that we're focused on cybersecurity together, that we make sure that they never interfere in any democratic elections or conduct any cybersecurity. And this is like any other strategic alliance, whether we're doing military exercises with our allies or anything else. This is about having capabilities to make sure that we both fight cyber together, which I think is a very significant accomplishment for President Trump.
I mean, broadly speaking, I don't have a problem with us making this type of agreement with just about every country on the planet, right? I mean, you should keep lines of communication open, and you should try and but I don't get this. How is this the same as doing military exercises with our allies? I mean, I don't think Putin, Russia is, I don't perceive them as our enemy. We're not at war with them. But I also don't think that we have too many of our agenda items are really that in sync.
Well, you
right?
know what we could do, if you wanted to take this on good faith and you wanted to say that, I don't know the degrees of the capacity, but I'm sure obviously Putin perceives that the United States interferes with his politics domestically, and I'm sure we do. If you wanted to do like the cyber equivalent of arms control, like we're going to both draw down interfering in each other's domestic politics and have a co-monitoring of it.
Yeah.
That could be great.
Yeah.
But as it is now, it does seem a little bit
And then I would
bizarre.
even go
Right.
on, like we're going to share certain technologies,
Right.
although I would be very nervous about, frankly, about sharing, our technologies about our grid, about our nukes. I mean, I would just be nervous about that.
No,
I mean,
don't
obviously,
think we
like,
should be sharing that with
we
anybody,
have like a non-proliferation, like you said, arms control treaties, and I imagine that involves. But I don't know. It's very strange.
I think you can monitor each other's sites without giving away this, specific aspects of how things work.
Very odd. Let's go to the phone.
It almost seems like an invitation to do more on some level.
Yeah, we're just this way. They're not violating our trust when they do it. We're inviting them. Call them from an 808 area code. Who's this?
Sam Seder, this is James from Riverside. What's going on, brother?
What's on, what's happening, James?
Hey, I was wondering, I was watching, just 2 points. Brooks v. Harris, Brooks all the way. And even though I can't hear him, I'm just talking to you. And the other thing was, have you checked out Proposition 98 here in California?
Yeah, I talked about 98 in relationship to what happened with the single payer thing based upon David Dayen's piece. I think I talked about it, I don't know, last Wednesday or something. And 98.
I wanted to hit on it.
What?
I was just wondering what your thoughts would be on if there's a way to kind of, what you learned essentially from Dayen, and is there a way to, I don't know, like hold off on the 98 or Prop 98 or restructure it or re-vote on it or something like that?
I don't know.
Would you say that there?
I don't know California politics enough to know how you get rid of something like that. But 98 basically just is and I know the history of it because when California passed, I think they call it Proposition 13. Massachusetts a year later or two called it Proposition 3, I think it was, if I remember my numbers correctly. And basically what it did is it slashed education funding because it cut property taxes. And it happened in Massachusetts. And like literally 1 year, I think I feel like it was between my sophomore and junior years in high school, we came in and just like half the shit was gone. Like there was no, like we lost like half the sports teams, like everything just like it was weird. And
now is that a shift? Is that just a shift of property tax money not going to education? Like could that gap be filled essentially? Like let's say
no, but let me tell you what 98 basically
California legalized.
98 basically said was in reaction to that years later. We're not ever going to do that again. So 40% of the general funds must go to education. And so
to education.
And then that inhibits your ability to do single payer because you got to raise taxes. And if 4 cents of every dollar, 40 cents on every dollar that you raise in those taxes has to go to education, then you actually have to raise $2 to pay for single payer health care. And I don't know how you get rid of it. I don't know.
I was just wondering if you in 2018 when we legalized pot, for instance, we could do something like Colorado where all that tax money gets re-injected and somehow we could maybe make up either educational wise or healthcare wise
ganja for single payer,
along with obviously the gas tax that just got passed, and everybody knows, when you stick the population of Canada into the state the size of California, that's a lot of drivers, a lot of cars, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like, obviously, if we're looking at California in a historical context, like your guest said today, where history is very important, a large majority of the taxes that are accrued from the state legislature often end up being put into the general fund and not used what they were actually used for in terms of the original gas tax. I was just wondering if there's just little things you can see that might help us inject more money where it wouldn't be too burdensome to the taxpayer, but at a large rate of 39 however million people we have in this state, we could somehow.
I don't know how you get around
do single payer and education.
I don't know how you get around 98. I just don't know how you do that. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that you can't. I just don't know it. I appreciate the call.
All right. Well, I'll be back to you on it. And
right.
Okay, bye.
Appreciate it. I mean, I presume. I presume there's a way of doing it. I just don't. I'm just not aware of it. Drewski. Michael, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. I just want to. Apologies if you guys have already talked about it her before, but I'm just not too familiar with the topic. What is the deal with Linda Sarsour hate? Is it valid? Much appreciated if you guys could briefly touch on it. I haven't followed too much of this. I mean, I read the speech that she gave where she talked about jihad, but she talked about it in the spiritual sense. And I guess the problem is you're not allowed to say that word out loud. Is that the problem?
That's what it seems
It's
like.
a political correctness issue.
Yeah. I mean, it's exactly. And you mean political correctness among people who are hysterical anti-Muslim people. I mean, the way she's being smeared is ridiculous, and it's pretty obvious why they would want to, because she's a prominent Palestinian, she's prominent Muslim. I know people who advocate around those issues who they personally they would like to advocate for those issues without the sort of religious identification. They have some disagreements with her, but the way that went down is, it's obvious what it is. They're just trying to pick off a target. And she does important work.
Orange Menace. No party for young people. 84 Dianne Feinstein announced she has raised $650,000 for her election. She will be 90 when she finishes her next term. Wow. I mean, I'm less concerned with her age, although I think that's relevant, frankly, when you start getting into your mid-80s. But I'm more concerned with just Dianne Feinstein.
Yeah, there's no reason why a California Senate seat needs to be in a conservative Democrat's hands.
Teal, guest recommendation, Christy Lessie from the University of Washington. She works on many different topics, including globalization, gender studies, and the like. What she's most famous for is her work on chocolate, hence being called Dr. Chocolate. She's worked on a book titled Cocoa for the Polity Press resource series. I had her as a guest lecturer. She was great.
Is it like on the way chocolate and sort of like slave labor and Cote d'Ivoire or whatever? Like, is that what it's about?
I don't know. We'll have to
look it up.
Have to look that up. Let me take a little note here. Sam, I like Fred Trump. I like Ivanka Trump. Both had class and did a lot of good. Must have skipped a generation. But you know what's interesting? Presidents who are not so nice are better for foreign relations and worse for internal policy. Look at Putin, for example. Look at Nixon. His madman theory, it worked with Vietnam. Did it really?
Is this a joke? Is this a joke?
I don't know. Epish.
Yeah, it was great. Really.
Why did our revolution ditch Tim Canova but stick with Gabbard? I mean,
I think Tim Canova's saying a little bit of wacky stuff.
Tim Canova, I mean, and look, I say this as somebody who I think probably was the first person to have Tim Canova on mass media. We had him on Ring of Fire very early on. But, the idea that, he was deep into the Seth Rich conspiracy, The idea that Debbie Wasserman Schultz has, or the DNC has the ability to essentially ignite his computer via the power strip twice. I start to wonder, is this guy all there?
What do you think my private server was for?
I mean, if only.
Destroy Tim Canova.
If only they had the competence to do that type of thing.
We only have the competence to do that to progressives. With Republicans, we allow them to defeat us.
Tim Canova is he's on Twitter again. Press the button. Do it. Do it.
Debbie, would you care to fry Canova's computer this time, or shall I do the honors? And Huma sent him a text from an unknown address saying that we're looking at his children because we are. Oh, run a negative ad in Pennsylvania? I don't think we should do that.
But
that might hurt us with swing voters.
I mean, Gabbard, I think her politics are, a little questionable in some areas, but she has not.
She never said anything like that.
She has not exhibited the sort of sheer lunacy. I honestly don't understand why she's kept around. Taking awards from Sheldon Adelson is a definite deal breaker. It is for me.
It's a deal breaker for me. I agree.
Glad you're feeling better, Mike. Happy to have you back. To oversimplify, we have austerity from Chile. We have our privatization from Russia. We have our torture from Iraq. That said, the plutocrats have been using individual states now for revanchist, anti-democratic petri dishes. Also, prepare to see more coming out about Priebus. Watching the outgoing director of the Office of Government Ethics, Walter Schaub, for more on that. By the way, Nancy McLean is having her reputation trashed by the cokeheads. Everyone needs to read her book, Democracy in Chains. Share the real links on social media, not the fake ones from Medium, WAPO blogs, and National Review. That Make America Great Again song was nowhere near as good as the Cleveland Con version last year, which was awesome. No, I said they were right to ditch the. Why do they stick with Gabbard, though? I mean, I made that clear. I think like there's a. I mean, I wouldn't.
I think
do that necessarily, but
she has obviously generated a lot of goodwill for herself, and she's a member of Congress, and she also, I mean, she did quit being a deputy chair of the DNC to endorse Bernie. I mean, like her. I mean, this is why I think we're trying to keep an eye on her, because she has made some progressive moves on things like single payer. So she's very in the mix. I mean, it's a lot easier. Tim Canova said stuff that's actually crazy. He also doesn't have any actual power now.
Right.
Steve Pippinger, can someone please punch Ted Cruz? By the way, I volunteer. Matt, pick a letter. Okay, Sam, I nominated a Majority Report 4. One time today, People's Choice and News, politics categories, podcast awards. Pretty straightforward process requiring an email address, but people should know your show is listed under T, as in The Majority Report. Good luck. Thank you. People head over to Podcast Awards, The Majority Report. Homer 3D. Everyone just keeps saying that the Trump people met with the Russian lawyers to just talk about adoption, and there wasn't reason for the ban in the first place. Imposed because we placed a lot of sanction Russia.
Also,
left is best.
Also, adoption. Jesus Christ.
Steven 250. Sam, you played the thermals this morning during your first transition. What is this? Citizen Radio? Majority Report's a great source for rare poupees, but I feel like you're really damaging your core brand.
I moved on her very heavily.
Judging by the VHS tapes, it seems, Sam, this undisclosed location Sam is broadcasting is located somewhere in the past.
In the past?
No, there's not VHS tapes. Those are digital video tapes.
It looks pretty relaxing.
Chicago Don, I don't get why you're still so skeptical about Trump collusion, but it's good to hear sane skepticism somewhere. Trump was in the building when they met. They were discussing this very thing. He tweeted that night about Clinton's emails. They didn't need him to be competent or any sort of mastermind. They wanted to damage Clinton, our system, which they did. I've been listening since about a month into Air America when a station in Alaska finally picked it up. Keep up the great work. I mean, the reason why I am suspicious is that what did Russia didn't need to do anything. They didn't, I mean, there was no reason for them to collude. Like, why would they? That would be like, I mean, is there any reason for me? It would be like if there was somebody out there who desperately wanted me to win the podcast awards, okay, for an obvious reason, whatever it is. They own Majority Report paraphernalia. They want it to increase in value. I have no idea. And they have a plan to use multiple email addresses. And that's the way they're going to nominate themselves or register themselves. Like, do we need to meet in person for them to tell me that plan? No, they can go do it.
So I should tell Jeremo that the meeting's off.
Yeah, tell Jeremos the meeting's off. He doesn't need me to sanction it. I mean, honestly, and then the equivalent would be me to say, like, hey, everybody, I wouldn't tell you what to do, but why not you, I mean,
you're doing it
and
right
I'm not
now.
telling people, I want to be clear, I'm not telling people to do that.
We would frown upon it.
Yes. But my point is that we don't need to meet to do that, right? Like, you just want me to win the award.
But what if you're stablemates? They were talking about fucking adoption. You know, the left is so cynical.
Juniper J. with the Pence selection of Veep by Trump. Who steered Trump to pick him? How did that happen? I think it was Manafort. It was a lot of there was, Republicans who wanted him to win, understood that, Pence could rally the very religious.
I think that's a good point, that Manafort is sort of like 50-50, kind of like ultra sleaze, probable, some type of underworld figure, and just like traditional Reagan Republican strategist.
Petrus, shalom, Rachel. I watch your show for a number of reasons, not the least of which is your proven track record of getting knowledgeable guests on. Impressive. Do they know about your move from failed comic to hitman for Hillary Clinton? I have a question. What grounds your apparent view that our current political and economic systems can be fundamentally transformed for the benefits of our society at large? You seem enjoy discussing micropolitics. Is this something you find productive until such time as a more radical solution or circumstance comes about? I don't see much of a future with the Dems or Republicans. I mean, I guess my perspective on this is that I think planning for the revolution at this point is, I don't think there's anything I can do. Let's put it this way. If the revolution's happening, I don't think there's a whole lot that I can do to help that. I think I can, in the meantime, I can help people understand sort of the dynamics of the politics that exist today. And, I don't know if anybody read that piece. I think it was in the New York Magazine.
About climate?
Yeah.
Jesus.
And it's pretty bleak. And, yeah, I mean, I know the revolution was supposed to have started a month ago, according by those who thought that Trump would bring it about. But I'm a little afraid that Trump, there's as much of a chance of the revolution starting as, I'd say that's probably a slightly better chance that Trump gets reelected than the revolution starting.
Are you kidding me? People are uprising across the entire country. It's a completely different ball game now, just like Susan Sarandon said. And you and Chris Hayes.
Just like contemplate the situation we're in now. What if the Democrats don't win in 2018? If they don't take one of the houses of
I think
Congress?
the planet would probably be over in a certain sense.
And think about how low a bar that is, right? Like, we were talking in 2016 of like, okay, there's a decent chance to take the Senate. And now we're just like, and the presidency. And now we're just like, oh, God, we need one house just to, slow the roll. But what if that doesn't happen? I mean, When's the revolution happening?
Do you think, though, I feel like, though, I mean, I don't know what the revolution even means, but I think that the problem is, though, is that the dumb left thing kind of, I mean, I actually think we do play a really, we don't just talk about micropolitics. When you have a show that has perspectives, whether they're Marxist or I guess a couple years ago when you had Graeber on, more around Occupy, anarchists, people giving forum to people who say that the economy should be fundamentally restructured and redesigned, and that ultimately, or we need to have a complete radical change to deal with climate like Naomi Klein did. I mean, I think we're expanding the bounds of conversation and what politics could be a lot. We're just not promoting like short-term fantasy thinking. But you know what I mean? There's no contradiction.
Well, this week's guests, I mean, I pre-recorded today's and I pre-recorded on Thursdays, and both of the guests are basically are speaking, are using Marxist, analysis on at least to a certain extent, on the topics of education, and the other one's going to be about our pension system. I mean, I just, contemplating, using the word revolution over and over again, and I find to be tiresome and like, okay, what happened to it? How'd that go away? I mean, I think there's just a lot more durability in people sort of understanding concepts like, political economy. I mean, just understanding that when we hear the term economics, there's an attempt to just make us think that economics are, physics, and they're not. Economics is really sort of is much about sort of rationalizing decisions as anything else.
It's retrospective. To be fair, I am hosting Mark Penn tomorrow.
Well, we got to balance.
Yeah, that. And
sometimes you don't want to overheat the revolution.
Yeah,
that's the thing. You don't want it to overheat,
right?
So you got to slow it down a little bit. Let's see. DX Fool. Hi, folks. Speaking of student financing, some of the commuter trains between San Francisco and San Jose are moving billboards for SoFi, student loan refinancing company that is also advertised during the Super Bowl. It's run by Education Secretary Betsy DeVos. Purdue President Mitch Donnelly, a former congressman from Indiana and one of Newt Gingrich's lieutenants back in the day. Indeed.
And governor, too, right?
Core brand proposition. Can we have an uplifting story sometime? I'm feeling the late-stage capitalism sads. Has kind of an up with people vibe. Majority Report Zach, the DSA
I'll look for something for tomorrow.
For nationalizing passenger railroads without realizing that passenger rail lines are already nationalized. It's sad DSA types can make shit up so untethered to actual reality. The ironic thing is that DSA types never call for upzoning cities, which is really the only thing that can make inter-region passenger rail viable. The problem with our nationalized railway roads that we have a lease, I think, to CSX, is it, that is really unfavorable for Amtrak.
Yeah.
But we just need more. We just need more resources in rail, it seems to me.
Left is best.
There's nothing more foolish than a man chasing a hat, Miller's Crossing. Sammy Kammer. There was nothing wrong with several Trump campaign higher-ups meeting multiple times with Russians, but every single campaigner forgot to mention any of them on every forum, interview, and hearing. Yes, it's weird. Staten Island Mike. Some Twitter rando made a tweet saying that Cuomo was the reason New York State would not have single payer. Cuomo himself was like the first person to like the tweet.
Really? That's interesting.
Red Sun Ryan. That song is eerily reminiscent of the Socialist International. Derelicted. Sam Harris is mad at Michael. He's claiming everything in a video is a lie, but doesn't make any rebuttal at all. It just muses about how you guys have friends. He's a sad man. Oh, fans, not friends.
I was out seeing Chronics at Prospect Park on Saturday, and it was really funny, the contrast between that concert and the Sam Harris cult tweets. But we'll address it. We'll address it.
Bit of a comeback. Sam,
bit of
that
a
MAGA
glum
video
bucket.
is very reminiscent of Scientology production as well. Play 15 seconds of this song and see. Nobody will be able to hear it where I am now. Panhandlers. Saw the MAGA, Panhandle Liberal, saw the MAGA song 5 minutes after Trump tweeted the other day. I was immediately reminded of the Trump girls in Pensacola who I thought are now suing him for not paying. Yes. Flint. I guarantee that Nixon's foreign policy great guy got his idea from an Ann Coulter book on her take on McCarthyism and communism, but she carefully and purposely overlooks very important things like, Cambodia's disaster, his carelessness in killing many southern Vietnamese allies, and his use of the war to incite long. And extending it via the scuttling of the Paris Accords. That book also neglects the reality of the Communist Party predating McCarthyism is what we would call somewhat socialist today. They really didn't know and couldn't have known the atrocities being committed in the East because many of them hadn't even happened yet. Space Bear. Greg is the name I use when I don't care enough to remember a guy's name. Shame. Steve Mnuchin looks like Gary Shandling.
Perspective. If I could get to it.
Neff. The MAGA people sound like Up With People, exactly what American authoritarian music would sound like. Trump concession speech 2020. Did my appointment of Jared to ambassador to the United Korean People's Republic result in evaporation of Hawaii? Maybe. Some would say, like Gutsy Gabbard would say, we need this change. Michael Brooks' future wife, I think Mandela needs to do a song parody of the Make America Great Again song. Oh, there's something to that.
You need to fucking
Go
do
Link. Have been mindfulness meditating every morning for 3 months, 10% happier.
Yes, it's good.
With 10% happier app. Good for us who can't go to retreats, variety of types, courses. Starring by Nightline's Dan Harris, book interview.
Dan Harris interviewed Joseph Goldstein a couple years ago for a series on it. People should check that out. I haven't tried the app, but if it's helping people do it, that's great.
All right. Let's see. Colin Doucette. Matt, are you excited for The Last of Us Part 2? Is that a Busey tape in the background? It is. In the sticks. Random Rush. He's apparently melting down over Trump's Poland speech. I don't have the ability to do it here.
Just Western values.
Bernie or bust. Bill Clinton. Sam thinks he can hide, but we know he killed Seth Rich.
When you looked at Seth Rich and you looked at him plead for his life and you just thought of the power of my wife, you have any soul. You have no conscience left.
Calling from a 619 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, there's something we can agree on. Danny Feinstein needs to go.
Doug! Oh, my gosh. Hello, Doug. How are you?
Well, I'm pretty fine considering your boy Matt had me banned from Twitter yesterday.
Matt had you banned from Twitter?
Oh, wait, how did I ban you from Twitter?
That little rat ratted me out to Twitter. Now my account was suspended.
Sorry there. What did you do? What did you do today?
No.
What got you suspended?
I didn't. I guess he got mad because I said he had a groinless area that was busting his balls in his groinless area. So I guess he just couldn't take it. So you know what I'm going to do, Sam? I'm going to go to Jimmy Dore's show in the middle of August, dressed in my Obama outfit with a Cedar Suck sign. What do you think about that?
I love it.
Yeah, you probably would. People will start looking at the show again. But I'm going to do it. I really am going to do it. The middle of August, I'm going to go to the Jimmy Dore show, dressed in my Obama Padre costume, and to see if I can sit in the front row that says, with a sign around my neck that says Seder sucks. And I want to see if he actually picks me up and brings me on a panel or throws me out by security.
Yeah, the only thing I would say, Doug, is on that sign, Seder sucks on one side, majority.fm on the other.
Okay, I'll do that.
All right, great. Will you also send pictures?
Yeah.
You got.
Well, I think some of your guy, right wing Mandela, said he would go there and meet me there. So maybe some of your crew might show up if they don't stab me in the back.
All right. Well, I've told my crew to just cut back on the stabbings, at least for the
Okay.
Where else are Jews supposed to stab?
Make sure you tell your socialist thugs to stand down and don't attack me. You know, I'm not Donald Trump in Central Park, okay? And I don't want to be stabbed by a whole group of your socialist thugs when I'm at the Jimmy Dore show.
Well, what do you mean by Donald
Park.
Trump in Central Park?
You know what I mean. The Caesar. Brutus.
Caesar Brutus. Okay, I see what you're saying. I see. It didn't. You know, there was also a version of that with Obama. You know that, right?
Well, not even close. Not even close. There's a difference, though. So we don't. The right doesn't riot and loot and fight cops in the street.
We
don't put
Doug.
We don't put black mask on. We don't do that stuff.
I know you put on swastikas and hoods, but listen to me.
No.
Listen, you know that there was a version of that play with Obama, right?
No, maybe I don't know that, but if you told me, I'd probably look it up.
Well, I think you should look it up.
Well, did you know there was a rodeo clown that wore a Obama mask, and he was fired and lost his job, even though he had a George W. Bush mask and a Carter mask before, but they fired him at a rodeo because he wore a Obama mask. Did you know that?
Tough
shit.
Not. Oh, sorry, white boy.
Well, there we go. We both learned something new today.
Right, and neither one of them really interests me nearly as much as they clearly interest you.
Well, it is for everybody. It's part of the lexicon, the American lexicon nowadays. I mean, the fight for conservative and Republican is just about over with. We just have one more state legislature to go. We have a constitutionally unopposed government.
He's right about this
They'll
stuff.
appoint and amend the Constitution to whatever the GOP says, while the left is beating itself to death over Bernie still in Vermont. I love that guy from Vermont that's challenging Bernie, the homeless advocate that's challenging Bernie, says Bernie is a disruptive force to the Democratic Party, and it's proven in California, where I live, where single payer got shot down by Democrats, and now there's a feud among Democrats in California. So I just love it.
Can you hang up? Can you hang up on Doug, because I am finding his astute political analysis very depressing right now.
What do you think? You know what I thought, Sam? I really thought that after the election that you might learn a lesson, that you might even try to be objective just a little bit.
No.
But you doubled down on your progressivism. It's a losing cause. Just try to be objective once in a while, and maybe you can get things right. Because as long as you steer in that progressive
what
course,
do you think that I've gotten wrong?
Wrong? We're not Nazis. Trump supporters are not Nazis.
I didn't
We're
say
not
that you were
right-wing
Nazis.
nuts.
Oh, I was saying
your side is. You just mentioned the word Nazi. Not me.
I mentioned the word swastika, but are you saying that there's no
Same thing.
Okay, Doug, you got to just calm down.
I think we should
you
wrap this
said
up
that
now.
you were trying to argue that progressives were firebombing and were all wearing black bandanas or whatnot, and I was just suggesting to you that there is probably a greater tradition on the right of people wearing white hoods than progressives being part of a black bloc.
Well, that's a long time ago. We're talking about the here and now. The here and now is the same G20 rioters are the same rioters we're rioting in Berkeley. There's no difference between them.
Well,
and
I would imagine a lot of those people are German.
And I told this to Michael. I told this to Michael last year. There's no protest against it.
There's no protest against what?
There is no progressives are standing up with force to tell the socialist thugs to stand down.
Now,
they never
let me ask
do.
You this.
They never.
When Steve Scalise, right, who we all our prayers and thoughts are with him. When Steve Scalise said, "I'm David Duke without the baggage," what do you think he meant by that?
I don't know. I haven't really looked at that quote. How do you know that's not fake news?
Well, I mean, I don't know that he denied it. I mean, it was. I don't know if there was a recording
before
of
fake
it.
news was a thing.
And this was obviously.
I'm looking at actions, Sam. Look at actions speak louder than words. The actions of the left are violent. The actions of the right are talk. All the right does is talk. Blah blah blah. Talk talk talk. All the left does is talk, and then they go to violence. They riot, they loot, and battle cops in the street. There's a big difference, and you own the violence. Progressives own the violence.
Okay.
What do the right own? We own Trump.
Right, who said in our day we would smack him around, and if anybody smacks him around, I'll pay for the lawsuit?
But that was inside a rally, a privately to go in.
I see. Okay. So let me see if I get this
the
right.
Rioting,
Violence
the real
doesn't
rioting
count
was
if it
on
happens.
The street, which I witnessed.
Wait a second.
I witnessed it.
Doug,
I witnessed the rioting.
Doug, just calm down. I'm just trying to get the rules straight. The rules are violence doesn't count if it's inside. It only counts if it's outside. Is that right?
No. Real violence, yeah. The
real violence. Okay.
Have you ever
Doug.
had? Let me ask you a question.
No,
Sam.
Doug.
One thing.
No,
and
Doug.
I'll give it back because it's your show. I
it is my
one
show.
serious
It is
question,
my show.
Sam. One serious question.
One serious question. One serious question.
Okay. One serious question. Have you ever been to a Bernie rally at all in your life? And when you went, did any Trump supporters say "F Bernie" in white paint on your car?
On my car?
Yeah, if you had a car.
If I had a car, wait, it's a serious question, and you want me to?
I assume you drive.
Wait, if I had a car,
well, that happened at the Costa Mesa. That happened to Trump supporters.
If I had
at
a car,
the Costa Mesa
if you're
rally in
asking me the
California,
hypothetical,
that's what your side
Doug,
did.
If you're asking me a hypothetical, then my answer is yes. If I get to make believe that I drove to the Bernie rally, then yes. Also, there was, and in fact, it was you. It was you who painted my car.
Back in my day,
you use white. You use glitter.
If they interrupted a rally, they could get punched
Doug,
in the
I
face.
would never paint your car,
Doug,
Sam. You know that. I'm a pussycat.
You didn't know it was my car. Now, Doug.
I couldn't tell it's your
car. So Doug, are you feeling good about the Republican? You've been a long time Trump fan. Are you feeling good about the Trump administration?
I think Trump should have just kept on going to Australia, Japan. Then he should have went to Guam, and then he should have went to Pearl Harbor. Then he should have came to San Diego for a rally, and he should have stayed out for like 2 months. Because the more he stays in the United States, he gets nickel to dime to death by you guys in the progressive media who control the media.
But I'm not asking you about how the progressive media is. I'm asking just, you are presumably support Donald Trump not because of the painting on your car, but because you wanted him to do something to make America great again. Do you think is America greater again? I mean, I'm just curious. I'm just trying to get what are the top 3 things that Trump has done that you think have made America better again?
Oh, first, one thing, he's telling NATO nations to pony up 2% of the GDP. They got to pay up.
So
second,
he's
Kate's Law. Wait. Kate's Law is going to get passed. Sanctuary City Law is going to get passed. It's going to be law Those are two big ones. The border wall will be built. That's a guarantee. But to save the one for last, that's your buddy Ari Brennan from the Brennan Center for Justice. His head's going to explode when Trump signs the National Voter Registration Act, reconciled with proof of citizenship and photo ID requirements to vote. His head is going to explode,
all right, now,
just
Doug,
like yours.
Doug,
Everything
now,
I told you about that
Doug,
is true.
Okay, now, Doug, I'm muting you because you sometimes. Oh, well, Oh yeah, there you are. I'm going to bring it back in just 1 second. So, Doug, let me see if I got this straight. One is, you like Kate's Law, which the family of Kate has said, please don't call it Kate's Law because we're not interested in harming sanctuary cities. You think that's going to pass? 2, you like the fact that he jawboned our NATO allies and said pony up, which, of course, is what he did during the campaign. So we haven't seen that money yet. I don't know if it's going to come. And 3 is the wall is going to get built or some other thing is going to happen. Is there anything else? I'm going to give you one last chance, Doug, here, and I'll bring you back. Is there anything else that he's actually done? Now, I mean, it's been over 6 months. Is there anything else he's actually done, not said he's going to do, not just talked about, but actually done that you think is made America great again?
Oh yeah, executive orders to actually enforce immigration law on the books. That's happening now. We're reaping the rewards of that. People's lives are being saved. Americans are being saved because of those orders to enforce immigration laws. That's happening right now.
There are, in fact, been an increase in by about 40% of arrests of immigrants, and mostly nonviolent offenders has gone up, and I know that has made a dramatic impact in your life. But what are you going to do? What are you going to do when this investigation on this phony Russian collusion backfires, and then the DOJ actually investigates the real collusion between Obama's Department of Justice and Loretta Lynch and Comey, not to prosecute crooked Hillary? She still can go to jail, Sam, and you can still owe me $1,000. Unless, of course, the fat man from Jersey goes to jail first, then I would have to owe you $1,000. But I think you're going to be paying me first. Okay.
Sam, I still love you, man. Too bad that coward Matt, your buddy Matt is calling me
you know
a
what?
snack.
If you've been banned from Twitter, I'm not sure if we're supposed to have you on the show.
I have no idea what I did to get him banned from Twitter yesterday, but I'll take responsibility for it.
You got him banned from Twitter? I feel like that's almost definitely not true, but I love it.
I'm sorry. We don't have any more time for callers. I am sorry about that. I'm going to have to beep boop.
Doug might not be the answer we want, but he's the one we need.
All right. We're going to have 4 more IMs. Matt.
M.
We don't even have that. Michael Brooks, submissive bottom. We can meet Thursday. Don't tell your future wife. Why? We'll just do James Jones. So, Jimmy Dore update. He had on David Dayen on his TYT's Aggressive Progressive last night to discuss his article on, good. It was actually very interesting to see Jimmy take in information from a nuanced perspective and come around to understanding where Dayen is coming from. Afterward, Jimmy interviewed Michael Lightly and immediately reverted back to simply blaming Rendon after Dayen had spent 30 minutes going full in detail. Worth the watch to see Jimmy's thought process. I was wondering about that because I saw TYT tweet out the reason why there's no single payer is because of Proposition 98. And I thought, are they going to tell Jimmy this? But
oh, man. I wish Jimmy would come around so we could all get along again.
To be smart, that's not going to happen. Toupee and Chief, I see you built a sweet home studio with all that George Soros money you've been raking in. Calvin BW. She does say in her jihad speech that Muslims should not assimilate to U.S. culture, which I think is a little unreasonable. Our revolution didn't ditch Tim. They just sent out emails last night promoting him speaking in Los Angeles. Okay. Cozy Dink, I checked my spam and the behind-the-scenes link is nowhere to be found. Also, could you talk about your chest hair more often? I will send out another one. Killy, wouldn't the Seth Rich controversy go away if DC investigators announced his comms were clear of WikiLeaks contacts? I don't know, but I don't know what obligation DC in fact, I would say
I think you know a lot. I think you know a lot.
A, I'd say there's no controversy. B, I would say they have no responsibility to say who he had or did not have contacts with. Alex McKinnon, a GOP operative, is calling for a Hollywood-style reenactment of the Seth Rich murder since the anniversary of it is today. You know, oh my God. Historic Larry, are
Tell me
those
about my
tapes from Sam's
character.
covert jobs? If you look closely, one is labeled Seth Rich and another Peter W. Smith. All right, and the final IM of the day, Make America Great Again, was sung by the New Hitler Minstrels. That was a quote by Frank Conniff. All right, folks. Michael will be here tomorrow. I'll be back on Wednesday. See you then. Bye.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie.